Stealth is critical in almost any type of fishing. Any noise you make has the potential to scare off fish, and that's one less fish that could end up in your live well at the end of the day. So in this video, I'm going to compare the noise that these Minn Kota Raptors, Minn Kota Talons, and power pole blades make, so you can make an informed decision the next time you go to purchase a shallow water anchor. So I know there's some people who will say that, the noise a shallow water anchor makes isn't actually going to affect the fish, it's not going to scare them off, but I will argue against that point because I've definitely seen with forward-facing sonar, where I see a fish in a tree or something or on a stump, and I go to put my anchors down because I'm about to run it over, or if the boat keeps going forwards, I'm going to run that fish over. And when I put my shallow water anchors down, and I've done this with, all three types, when I'm fishing out of a buddy's boat, that fish gets scared off and it swims away. All right, that's one less fish I'm going to be able to catch at the end of the day. So, noise is definitely a critical factor. So let's go ahead and get into this comparison. To take this measurement, I'm going to use an app on my phone that just uses the phone's microphone and it outputs, the sound level in decibels. So I'm going to stand 6 feet away from the side of the boat for each one to keep it consistent. And I'm going to do this two different ways. Once with the back compartment lid open and once with the back compartment lid closed. So it's a little bit weird with the Minn Kota Talon just because the motor is up here out of the water. It's not in the boat. So it's not an apples to apples comparison 100%. I personally believe that with the back compartment lid open would be the most relevant, just because that lets the noise get to the microphone and it doesn't dampen the noise from the hydraulic pumps. Being in the back compartment will also dampen the noise going into the water, but the motor on the Talons, it's up here out of the water. It's not necessarily right in the water either, whereas it would be directly going to the microphone on this camera in the air. So, I'll let you decide which one you think is the most relevant, and I'll show both of them for you, and let me know what you think. So let's go ahead and get into the testing. So unfortunately, the analysis of this sound data isn't exactly as straightforward as some of these would be. So I'm going to report two noises, both the operational noise, which will be like the sound of the motor running or the pump running. And I'm also going to report a peak noise, which is basically the average of the three measurements that I took for the maximum noise that was recorded while the anchor was going down. So starting here with the numbers, for the power pole blade with the back compartment lid open, had an operational noise of 47.2 decibels and a peak noise of 50.6 decibels. And with the back compartment lid closed, it had an operational noise of 42.5 decibels and a peak noise of 50.1. For the Minn Kota Raptor with the back compartment lid open, it had an operational noise of 44.3 and a peak noise of 53 decibels. And with the back compartment lid closed, it had an operational noise of 44.2 decibels and a peak noise of 51.8 decibels. And finally, for the Minn Kota Talon, the open and closed obviously isn't really relevant for the Talon, but it had an operational noise of 40 decibels and a peak noise of 56.4 decibels. So, unfortunately, the analysis of this data isn't necessarily straightforward, and honestly, the data doesn't exactly make sense. So I want to point out that for the Raptor here, if you look at the operational noise with the back compartment lid open versus with the back compartment lid closed, it's basically the same. And that's just not real life. I'm not sure what was going on with the measurements for this, but there's something going on because it's obviously quieter with the back compartment lid closed. So I want to show you these numbers because I think they do help paint the picture, but I'm not going to rely solely on them. And another thing I want to point out is that these peak noises from each of these different anchors occur at a little bit different time. So the peak noise for the Raptors and the power poles both occur right as the anchor is going down. And if you compare the numbers from both with the compartment lid open and the compartment lid closed, you'll see that the numbers are pretty well the same for the peak noise. And the reason for that, I believe, is because this peak noise comes from that anchor actually going down. It doesn't come from the pump itself. So that's why outside the boat, the peak noise level doesn't really change on that. And the peak noise from the Talon comes from that part where it switches from just the fiberglass rod coming out to that second piece of aluminum coming out. So it's a little bit different there. I just wanted to point that out for you. But so what I'm going to do, obviously I gave you the numbers. For the results of this, I'm basically just going to tell you what I believe. And well, I think most people will agree with me on this, that I've heard all three of these in operation and paid attention. So basically, the Talon, obviously, and I've always thought this, has the quietest operation. But it also had the highest peak noise. So, you know, that's really, maybe the peak noise is what actually matters. And also, the Talon has that issue where when you get dirt in it, or maybe even sometimes when they're clean, they make this horrible screech noise. Yeah, that one. And that is, of course, not good. That's gonna scare the fish. So they have their strengths, but they're not perfect, that's for sure. And so it's a little bit hard to compare that. But as far as the Raptors and the power poles, honestly, I believe, and most people will tell you, that the Raptors are going to be a little bit quieter than the power poles. It's not quite night and day difference, I don't think. Like, if you look at these numbers, they're similar. If you go with the compartment lid open, the Raptor has, a bit of a lead over the power pole. If you go with the compartment lid closed, they're pretty similar. I guess the power pole has a slight advantage, but there's something going on with that number from the compartment lid being closed for the Raptor. So, I would give the edge here to the Raptor, and it's hard to say, probably the Blade next and then the Talon being last, just because the Talon does have that high peak noise when it switches from the first stage of deployment to the second stage of deployment. But anyway, I wanted to present the numbers to you all and give you my opinion, but really what's important is your opinion. So, look at the data, see what you think, and let me know in the comments down there what you think. And if you found this video to be helpful, be sure to hit the subscribe button right here so you don't miss the rest of these anchor comparison videos. And be sure to check out the flex comparison right here. Thank you all.